So, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your interest in attracting the Asian markets to your hotel. I'm here today speaking with Barry Nakano from Peckroom Marketing. Hey, Barry, how are you?
Hi, thank you, Jeremiah, for helping us set this up, and thank you to Clea for providing us with this opportunity.
Yeah, it's really great that they've helped us, spread the word a little bit so we can share on this subject. Now, for those of you who don't know Barry, he grew up around Asian tourism, uh, starting out in Hawaii, but also you did 10 years of sales and marketing in Japan, and then back here on the mainland, you worked for Disneyland, Hyatt, Lowe's, other companies like that, attracting Asian tourism. So you're a really great person to talk to on this subject. So this presentation is going to be about Barry sharing his experience, his point of view, and you know, this is from the horse's mouth kind of stuff. I'm sure you've been hearing about the California, Visit California, talking about China Ready, but this is the experience that he's going to share. So before we get started, how can people get to know a little bit more about you, Barry? Why do you do what you do?
As you mentioned, I got into the travel industry in Hawaii, where the Asian markets are not just a nice to have, but it's basically critical to survival. Some of the hotels in Hawaii might have anywhere from 15 to 40% of their business might come from Asia. Currently, it's primarily Japan, but China and Korean markets are growing. And then having spent 10 years in Japan in sales, representing hotels, and I was the representative for Budget Rent-A-Car in Tokyo. So I had exposure to the actual travel industry and how it all works and how the relationships, the importance of the relationships over in Japan. And then after coming back to the States and working for hotels and Disneyland, specifically targeting the Asian or international travel markets, I've got a pretty broad view of the Asian market or the international travel markets and how it all kind of works. And I thought, well, it'd be a good chance to share some of that experience and insight with CLIA members.
Great. And what's your end goal for doing presentations and speaking engagements like this?
Well, I think they're twofold. I'd like to again share some of the insight and experience in these markets, so that we can kind of reduce or eliminate some of the mystery around Asia. I'm sure there's a lot of interest now in Asia, but because of the differences in cultures and the language, there's probably some mystery involved, and potentially some intimidation as well. So hopefully we can get rid of some of that, and also show that it's not that different from a lot of other markets, and it's not that difficult to get started and reaching out to those travelers. And the other side of it is also, the more we can improve our services here, we can enhance the experience of Asian travelers when they come to the States. And so when any time we can improve experience, it gets passed along to their friends and family, and it helps to grow the market and increase tourism. So it all works together.
Well, that's great. So we're going to get started here. Thank you so much for taking the time to put a presentation together. I just want to tell everybody that I'll be watching the chat box, and you can ask questions, and I'll try to inject them at the right points. And also, don't worry about taking notes. We do have a PDF to download at the end of the presentation. That way you can have all the facts and figures that we have in this presentation. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Barry.
Okay, great. Thanks. Give me a moment while I share my screen.
All right, looks good.
Okay, great. And before we get started, I just want to mention that it's going to be hard to fit everything you need to know about the Asian tourism into like a 50-minute or a 1 hour presentation. So we're going to try and touch on as many points as we can. Points that we think could be helpful to you as you develop your strategies or determine if the Asian markets are fit for your property. And then we'll try and move this along because we know that your time is valuable. So we don't want to take up too much of your time. So anyway, just to get started, first thing is just to give you an overview of what we plan on touching upon. We'll be talking about some opportunities. We'll also be providing information, some statistical information if you're not sure if the Asian markets are something that you should get involved in. You've heard a lot about it, and maybe you want to know why there's so much interest in Asia right now. And then we'll go over some opportunities and then touch upon some items that we think would be helpful for you to know, and also some options to get started. Okay?
Great.
And first of all, I got this information from Visit California. These are the 5 top overseas markets to California. So it doesn't include Canada and Mexico, but it actually shows that the three of the top 5 feeder markets to California are from Asia: China, Japan, and South Korea. China is number 1, as you can see, with about 1.3 million visitors from China coming to California. And then there's the UK, Australia, and then Japan and South Korea fill out the top 5. And so when we talk about the Asian markets, we're gonna focus more on
Hi, Barry. I'm sorry, your mic cut out. Would you mind just going back 10 seconds?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Out of the top 5 feeder markets to California, China, Japan, and South Korea comprise 3 of those positions.
And so that's 2.4 million travelers in general, compared to 1.2 from United Kingdom and Australia, 2 to 1. I think those are pretty good numbers.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about Asia, there are a lot of countries in Asia, and a lot of they also include Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines. But we're going to focus on the top 3 because these are the 3 markets that we feel can provide the greatest impact. China, as you've probably heard, their population is about 1.3 billion, which is why there's so much interest in that market. Right now, we don't have a visa waiver with China, so they still need a visa to come over here. The U.S. government is trying to make it easier for Chinese travelers to acquire visas. So anything we can do to make it easier is going to help to increase the number of Chinese that actually come here. And the fact that they have to get a visa is also one of the reasons why about half of the travelers that come here come over on organized either tour groups or package tours. Japan and South Korea both have visa waivers, which means a citizen of either of these countries can just get on a plane and come over here. They don't need a visa. They do need a passport, but it makes it real easy to come here. So a lot of the travelers come here multiple times, and so there's opportunities for repeat travel. Japan is the more mature market, been around for over 30 years, so they're more independent, more adventurous, and they rent cars, and they also like to stay in nicer accommodations, so it should be a good opportunity. And South Korea is another emerging market, so definitely one to keep your eye on. Okay, and let's look at some overall numbers. These are the numbers for each individual market. The population of China, as I mentioned, is 1.3 billion. Japan is about 128 million. South Korea is over 50 million. And if you look at the outbound travel from these countries, China at this point is about 122 million. Japan and Korea are 17 million and 19 million. And the numbers on the right are interesting because if you look at the bottom, South Korea, it's 38% of their population travel overseas, which is very high. And then Japan is about 13%. And if you look at China, China is still relatively low. So, the number of, the percentage of the population that actually travel overseas is low in comparison to other countries. So, and if you look, when you consider the size of the population, if we can bump up travel, overseas travel by only 1%, we're looking at about a 13 million increase in overseas travelers. So
Yes.
that's
1%, 13 million. Wow.
okay. And this just shows why there's so much interest in China. If you compare the population of the different countries, China compared to the US, Japan, and UK, Japan and UK are two of the third and fourth leading inbound tourism markets right after Canada and Mexico. And so those are two third and fourth key markets to the US. And look at China and the population. That's why there's so much interest right now in China. It's more the potential. Now let's look at inbound travel into the US. Japan is currently ranked number 4, as I mentioned, right behind the UK at about 3.75 million. And out of that, about 15% of those travelers come to California. Then China is ranked number 5 at about 2.6 million. And about 45% of those travelers come to California, which is why China is currently the number 1 overseas market to California. And then South Korea is number 8, and about 24% of their travelers come to California. Now, if we look at where the flights are arriving into California, currently this is information I got from Visit California. Currently, there's about 124 weekly nonstop flights from China to California arriving into 3 gateway cities: San Francisco, San Jose, and Los Angeles. And so what does all this mean? If we just take some numbers and kind of, these are ballpark numbers, but if you look at 124 flights and say there's about 250 passengers per flight and about 50% of them stay in California, and if they spend 5 nights here at an average rate of about 300, then we're looking at about a $23 million per week infusion of revenue into California. This is just from China. Now if we look at Japan, about 102 weekly nonstop flights arrive into California from Japan. And they arrive into San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And if we take a look at the same numbers, we're looking at about a $19 million per week infusion of revenue into California. Okay, and if we look at South Korea, South Korea has about 56 weekly nonstop flights arriving into California. They arrive into San Francisco and Los Angeles, and which would equate to approximately about $10 million per week of revenue into California. And what does all this mean as a whole? Okay, if we look at all the flights that arrive from Asia per week at about 282 weekly nonstop flights from Asia, and if we say about 50% stay in California, the rest may transit on to other destinations in the U.S., we're looking at about a $52 million infusion of revenue into California per week. So this is pretty significant. And if this business is coming here, then it's a matter of what can you do to tap into this and to capture your share.
That's great.
Okay. Okay, and so what are the opportunities we're looking at? One thing we thought we should touch on are holidays and how they can impact revenue. Travel from Asia is often influenced by holiday periods or travel periods when they're able to take longer vacation times. And so if you look at, probably the top one is Chinese New Year's. It happens either in late January or early February. Chinese New Year's is celebrated by the countries in Asia that have a large Chinese population, but it also includes Korea. So, anything you can do to show your acknowledgement of Chinese New Year's, and if you have any neat periods or slower periods around the late January, early February time of the year, then this is something that you should definitely take a look at. Japan has a period in early May called Golden Week. This is a time of the year when Japanese can take, there are a number of holidays that kind of fall within a short period where they can just take a few days off, and they can actually take a longer travel. They can take longer holidays. So Golden Week is a time of the year when if you, have a need to fill some rooms during early May, this is something you should definitely take a look at. Obon is another period in Japan that allows Japanese to take longer vacations. Oftentimes, many of the companies in Japan actually shut down during Obon. And so this is a time, if you need business in August, definitely look at Obon. Harvest Festival is, another travel period. This is for Korea. And we actually create every year a holiday calendar, which we provide to our clients, especially which is useful if our clients or partners are, very, interested in tapping into some of these stronger travel periods. And so if any of you would like a copy of this, I'd be happy to provide it to you.
And I just wanted to make a point about Golden Week in May, if I can. This is usually a 8, 10, or 12-day travel period, and because Japanese people work so hard, they really save up their money, and they do look at this vacation as a big celebration opportunity. So it's a big travel. It's a long-term stay, but also, spending $100 at a restaurant is not out of the question. So those are nice opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. And so what do Asian travelers look for? And often, most of these are very similar to other international travelers. Natural attractions, of course, is a big thing. National parks, any famous points of interest, Golden Gate Bridge, that type of attraction is, they like the photo opportunities. But something that's actually growing is like social media. Instagram is a good example where they like to post photos of famous points of interest. So if you have any points of interest in your area, that could be an Instagram photo opportunity. That could be a big draw for Asian travelers. And then the theme parks are obvious, and activities. As the markets get more adventurous, they get more independent. They start looking not just for things to see, but also things to do. So if you have any activities in your area, and this is just, the photo here is just an example of probably a surf club from Japan. But they're also, they might be interested in hiking, in bird watching, and different types of activities. So, explore some of the things that you offer in your destination, and feature them when you reach out to Asian travelers. Then also there are sporting events. Japanese are into golf, baseball. Dining is a big thing, and dining could be Western style, like U.S. dining, but it could also be like the Chinese tours. They often like to know what kind of Chinese restaurants are nearby. Put that information together. Japanese, Japanese cuisine is popular all over Asia, so sushi restaurants could be something that might be of interest to travelers. Shopping is a big thing. Shopping could be the retail centers, but also any kind of unique shopping, and especially outlets. Outlets are a big draw today. So if you have an outlet center nearby, make sure you feature that information. And weddings. Weddings are very expensive in Asia. So we're seeing a trend, especially in Hawaii. We see a lot of people coming over to actually have their wedding in Hawaii. When I lived in Japan and got married, we actually had our wedding in Hawaii. Not only was the cost, less, but also we brought friends and family with us. And so for them, it was a great excuse to go to Hawaii. The same thing could be here in California as well, like a beach wedding or up in like a Yosemite or like some kind of a unique wedding experience. Those are things that could be very appealing to travelers.
And I wanted to also add a note here. If you add these activities to your website, that's great. Just remember that Asian travelers love to plan months and months and months ahead. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to a Starbucks in Tokyo and I see somebody with all their maps and everything pulled out, planning their stay. So show the activities, and then also show how people can get from point A to point B to point C, how they could work with you to plan their wedding. That's just really, really helpful for them.
Good points. Good points. Of course, there are the group tours that we're often familiar with. We see the buses coming up with the tour guides holding a flag. Those are still coming over here, but there's also some other types of group tours as well, like incentives, maybe some corporate meetings. The group tours are handled by the receptive tour operator. So hopefully you've developed relationships with the receptive tour operators, and if you haven't, reach out to them. Most of them are based either in Southern California or around the Bay Area. They're the ones that actually handle the handle the arrangements for these tours, package tours. And they also make recommendations too. So if you have something interesting that they can offer to their clients overseas, that you could actually be helping them. They probably would be very appreciative of information you can provide to them. Of course, there's a FIT and package tours. Those are still coming over here, especially from countries like China, where they still need to get a visa to come over here. It's easier for them just to jump on a package tour. Corporate is also another thing that if you have businesses in your area, there are a lot of Asian companies, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, they might be in your area. Go after, reach out to those companies and let them know what you have to offer and develop relationships with them, because they might bring in just staff, but then they also might bring in and have meetings and groups that come in as well. Conferences and events. This is something that I think we normally have them in the normal course of our businesses. But there are a lot of attendees that come in from Asia. So any kind of information you can provide on these events and conferences would be very helpful. And I think, Jeremiah, don't you have a relationship with Yokohama that you can share with us?
Yeah, I am the membership chair for the San Diego Yokohama Sister City Society. And we've welcomed 2 groups of junior high school students over from Yokohama. And we even sent a Mission Bay jazz band over to Japan, and they did a tour. So you were just talking about building relationships with these associations. I think that's so important. With Asians, relationships are the key. I really say that the relationships are not flaky in Asia. If you establish a good conversation with somebody and you show that you respect them, you give them deference, they remember that. So these relationships are the key to attracting associations or other fraternal organizations.
Those are good points. These events and conferences could also provide opportunities for destinations that may not have the normal or what we would consider the popular points of interest or attractions, could still be host to some of these events. So these are definitely things that should be explored. Sports groups, there are a lot of sports clubs or tournaments that come over here. So even if you don't have an attraction or a famous landmark in your area, if you have fields that can host softball or baseball or facilities that can host basketball or volleyball tournaments, those are things that should be explored as well. They might be opportunities that you may not have thought of that could be very attractive to the Asian travelers, but also information that you should provide to the receptive tour operators, because they're always looking for opportunities to promote to their clients overseas. Student educational tours. When I was with hotels in California, we hosted a lot of high school student groups from Japan. In Japan, the high schools generally schedule travel for all of their seniors. And in the past, it was domestically within Japan, but more and more they're traveling overseas. So you may have an opportunity to pick up, some significant business from student groups. When I was with hotels in California, we had some groups that were over 100 rooms that included, both the students and the faculty and their escorts. So, and these groups have breakfast in the morning, and oftentimes they'll have a dinner, at least one dinner at night, and they'll spend 2 or 3 nights in one destination. So it could be some significant opportunities. The next thing I wanted to touch upon is something that you may or may not have thought of, but even if you don't have, again, the normal attractions or points of interest that you would think would be appealing to Asian travelers, you may have things within your destination that could be very appealing to the technical visit side of it. The countries or the governments, companies are always looking for new innovation and ways to improve their systems and their quality of life. So if you have some things in your area that might be of interest, and they offer tours, like here's just some examples, like water treatment, distribution centers, and waste management. These are things that you may have in your backyard that you may not realize or may not have thought of as being attractions, but they could be very appealing if you take this information to the receptive tour operators, let them know that you have these available. They can go and promote these to their clients overseas and might end up getting some groups out of this. Okay. So let's touch upon some things that we thought you might be useful for you to know. Okay, first of all, showing cultural sensitivity could be very important. Could be very significant way of establishing credibility and developing a relationship with not just the travelers, but also with the receptive tour operators or the corporate clients in your area. Here's an example. The Chinese have a zodiac calendar with animals for every year. This year, 2017, is the year of the rooster. Next year is the year of the dog. So if you have Asian travelers that come in and you display, for example, Happy New Year during their Chinese New Year period with the symbol of the animal, that could go a long way to showing that you respect their culture and that you're showing cultural sensitivity. Okay. Okay, Chinese breakfast. Oh, sorry. Chinese breakfast is another thing. If you're working with any receptive tour operators trying to attract Chinese business, chances are they've asked you if you offer Chinese breakfast or if there's Chinese breakfast available in your area. And so, what is a Chinese breakfast? These are just 3 of the key things or the main staples in a Chinese breakfast. Congee is rice porridge. It's kind of watered down rice where they can add condiments to it. It's usually flavored with some kind of either chicken broth or something. But congee is a staple for Chinese breakfast. Chinese tea is something that you should probably be offering anyway. You can just pick it up in packets and make it available the same way you do with coffee or regular like Western teas. And it's very inexpensive. Then steamed buns, if you have Chinese, either a restaurant or an outlet where you can pick up some steamed buns along the way, this could be something that could be the difference between getting and losing some group business. And if you can't, or if you don't feel comfortable offering these on property, if you have a Chinese restaurant nearby, reach out to them and ask them if they offer Chinese breakfast for groups. And if they do, use them as a resource. Let the when you do your sales, let the receptive tour operator know, or the corporate client know, that there's a restaurant nearby that does offer Chinese breakfast. So you don't have to do it yourself, but if you can get get information about this together and include it in your presentation, this could go a long way to capturing business.
And I think this is a really nice point in terms of pay-per-click advertising. If you can highlight that in pay-per-click, it's just a great differentiator.
Yeah. Also organically as well, right? If you have information, or if you provide in any of these items organically, when someone does a search, like here on the next items that we're going to touch upon are just some other things that you could add if you are serious about going after these markets. Like TV channels is a good example. Most of the satellite and cable TV providers have channels that you can add on, you can subscribe to. And if you do, then you should definitely provide that information in any kind of either marketing or sales materials that you put out. Let the receptive tour operators know that you do offer Chinese or Japanese or Korean channels, because that's something that shows that you are serious about their business, and you really welcome their travelers. Newspapers, if you have access to any kind of newspapers in your area. Sometimes supermarkets, Asian supermarkets, have free publications that are available. Just pick up some of those and make them available in your lobby. That's something that is really, there's no cost to it, but a service you can provide. Slippers in guest rooms. This is something that you may be already providing for other guests, but this is something that could be very appealing to Asian travelers. And lastly, we thought we'd just mention this, but most hotels today are no smoking hotels. So when information on that is provided through websites or through sales materials, you probably just say non-smoking hotel. Well, a lot of Asians still smoke, unfortunately, but they do smoke. And so if they come over here, like especially with a group or even with an FIT, they might be searching for a hotel that offers designated smoking areas. So if you provide information on that, you may have a competitive edge over other hotels in your area that do not offer this information. It could be just an outdoor area where people can go out there and smoke. Okay. And how do you get this information to the traveler? Well, obviously you're going to want to be able to communicate with the traveler in the most effective way, and we definitely recommend that you provide information in their language. And so this chart just gives you an idea of the differences in the different what languages are both spoken and written in each culture. In China, you've probably heard of Mandarin and Cantonese. Well, Mandarin is a spoken language, and it's used in China and Taiwan. Cantonese is a spoken language of Hong Kong. But when you talk about like some kind of a written or a printed publication or an online information through a website, you want to look at the written language. And so for China, it's actually simplified Chinese. Taiwan and Hong Kong both use traditional Chinese. Simplified Chinese has only been around since the 1960s. China decided to simplify the written form of their language to make it easier and to increase literacy. So they introduced it in the 60s, so it's really not that old, but it's important if you're trying to reach the Chinese travelers that if anything written should be in simplified Chinese. Japan and South Korea are pretty simple because it's Japanese and Korean. Yeah. So just to illustrate or give you an idea of, is it important to provide information in these languages? This is something that I like to look at in reverse. If I think of it as like, if I was traveling to an international destination where I don't speak their language, what would be important to me and would influence my travel decisions? Well, imagine you're going to a country like, say, this is just Japan. I think consider you're going to Japan and would like to experience accommodations that are not the typical big box or big branded hotels. You want to experience more of a traditional accommodation in Japan, and you found some websites, and but four of those websites are in Japanese and one was in English. Which would you more likely take a look at and consider booking a reservation at? And that's basically the way you should look at it for Asian travelers, or not just Asian, international travelers as well. They're going to look for information in their language. So if you can provide that information, you have a big advantage over your competitors. And think about it. Who does a really good job of this are the OTAs. If you look at the business that you're currently getting from Asia or from international, there's a good chance that the bulk of those bookings are coming from OTAs, and that's because they recognize the need to be able to communicate in the language of the traveler, and so they do a good job of putting together websites in each language. So they're getting the business, or the travelers are booking through OTAs, which you're getting that booking, but you're also paying higher fees for that too. So one of the other things that we are trying to do is to help you to increase your direct bookings. Okay.
And on that point, I wanted to say, if somebody loves your hotel, but they don't understand the cancellation policy, they don't understand if you're going to charge their credit card right away, they don't understand if they can change dates. Well, the OTAs are saying, yeah, just book now, you can cancel, it's easy. So if they don't understand your terms and conditions on your website, you're not going to win that argument with the OTAs, right?
Right. Yeah. And so one of the questions we often hear is, well, how about Google Translate? Don't they offer, translated, or don't they translate multiple languages?
Hi, Barry. Your microphone cut out just a second. Can you go back about 10 seconds?
Okay. One of the questions we get often is, what about Google Translate? They offer, they translate into different languages basically at no cost. So isn't that good enough? Well, actually, this question was posed to me when I was meeting with Visit Anaheim several years ago. I was meeting with the executive team over at Visit Anaheim, who were interested in targeting these Asian markets and interested in our services to develop Asian language websites. And the president at that time asked me this question: why should we hire you when we can just have our website translated? We can use Google Translate to translate our website. So what I thought was, okay, if I were to take English and translate it, use Google Translate to translate it into another language, he probably wouldn't understand or see the difference. So what I did was I took their biggest attraction, Disneyland. I went to their Japanese website, copied and pasted some of their content into Google Translate, and output it into English. And this is what I actually showed them, and the response was, whoa, I don't even know what they're trying to say, or this is certainly not what we want to have in our website. So this is something that it might appear to be a great option, but Google Translate does serve a purpose. If you're selling something with just like a widget with just a size, shape, or color, it works great. But when you think about what we sell in travel, we're not selling a widget. We're selling experience, and we're trying to touch the emotions of the travelers. So we're trying to convey intangibles, and so that's where machine translation like Google Translate falls short. It's hard for them to convey that type of the intangibles that we need to be able to communicate in travel. Okay, so what kind of tools do you need? Well, first of all, let's take a look at, and this is something that I don't need to sell you on. Online, it's basically online today. Online really touches all the these different facets of marketing, advertising, search engines. If you don't have a website today and someone does a search, you're not going to show up. social media. Social media should also point to your website, drive traffic to your website. Reservations is, bottom line is you want to secure reservations. And then there's branding. You're trying to develop your brand. You're trying to sell your image and your reputation. So, basically the best way to do it today is online. And so what are some of the options? Okay, this is, excuse me. Developing a custom website is probably the best option as far as effectiveness. You can develop multi-page websites that are very robust. These are examples of custom websites we've developed for some of our clients. They basically emulate their English website with the content, but then the question is, is this cost effective? Because custom websites can be very expensive to develop, and is all of the content really necessary, or is the content does it really touch upon what the travelers are looking for? So what we did was we created an option, a microsite option, and this is something that I won't go through into detail now, but if you're interested in another option, we do offer a microsite option specifically for hotels that include a lot of robust features that we've taken from custom websites, and we offer it at a very low cost, a very affordable cost. So this could be a very good option for you to look at if you're interested in going after these markets, but you don't have the budget right now to really put into like a more of a custom solution. Okay, and I put together just a few points that we thought would be good for you to take a look at, because you may already have, if you're a branded property, your brand might already have information on your property available in those languages, which if that's the case is great. But this is a checklist that you might want to just kind of go through when assessing your website. Or if you're considering developing your own website, these are things that you definitely should take into consideration. First of all, is the design and content appealing to the target market? Then is the text content well written? And this goes back to who actually, or how you translate and write your content. Is it written by a professional who knows these markets and these cultures, or is it just outputted from machine translation? That's something that you should definitely take into consideration. Does it effectively promote your destination? This is something I really stress, that it's important when you promote your hotel that you're also promoting your destination, because the reason the visitor is going to travel and you have a potential to get that business at your hotel is because there's a reason for them to visit your destination. So make sure you include a lot of information on your destination that would resonate with the markets.
I'm going to reiterate my point about showing people how to get around. That's a big part of helping them plan, and that's a big part of promoting your destination.
Yeah, that is a good point. Some visitors might rent a car, or they might have transportation included in a package tour, but some may be on their own as far as just getting around. So if you have information available on how to get to your property, how to get around within your property, if you have free shuttle service, if you provide that type of service, then make sure you feature that as well. Mobile is really important today. Is the site optimized for mobile devices? The term mobile responsive is something that we use when we look at website development. And then something that sometimes can be overlooked. You may have a great website; it can be very appealing. You have the information that has influenced the visitor to decide to book your property, and they go to the booking engine. Is the booking process intuitive, and does it make them feel comfortable? Does that make them feel that they can trust your property and trust the process? This is very important. So all of these points should be looked at when you're assessing either your existing website, whether it's a brand or a vanity website, or considering developing your own. Okay. And that when we talk about the booking process or booking agent, that this is really where you're looking at closing the sale. One of my pet peeves is when I go to a retail outlet, like a store that spent a lot of money on marketing and getting customers into their doors, and you pick up a product that you decide you want to buy, and when you go to the checkout line, the line is either long, or the cashiers are inattentive, or there are things that kind of impede the completion of the process. To me, that's a cardinal sin. You should make it as easy as possible for customers to complete a sale. And so that goes with the booking agent as well. You want to make sure your booking agent really is intuitive, makes them feel comfortable, and exudes trust. So one of the things that we've done, this is an example of booking agent we've developed specifically for Asian travelers, developed by our team of Asian developers, is we've developed a booking engine so that it provides the information that the visitors are looking for in a way and that makes them feel comfortable. But also in the checkout, we also allow the visitors to input all of their information in their language, including any questions or special requests that they have. And we've taken kind of a brick and mortar approach to this as well. We have online concierge that actually go into each reservation, translates the questions and requests into English for the reservation to the hotel. The hotel inputs it into their system. They respond to the special requests and questions in English, and we translate back into language. And what's resulted from this type of approach is that hotel companies like Starwood Hawaii, Prince Resorts Hawaii, that are major hotels in Hawaii and are actually Japanese-owned companies, they've actually used our booking agent over their own corporate booking agent. So it's something that you should definitely take a look at your booking process. Is it optimized? If you're using booking agents that already support these languages, you may be okay. So just make sure that you take this into consideration.
And I just wanted to add that chat feature, because Asians love planning things out and they love being on time. And can you imagine if they're flying across the Pacific, but then they think that if they don't check in on time, that there's a problem. So by being able to use that text chat feature, they can say, oh, we're going to be there at 3 o'clock, not at 1 o'clock. And that just reduces their stress. So I think that's really key.
Yeah. Okay, and because we have hotels that actually use our booking engine, we have access to actual numbers. And these are just some benchmark numbers. Granted, these are from the hotels that we work with primarily in Hawaii. Last year, 2016, we processed over $16 million in direct consumer reservations from Asia. About 90% of that business was from Japan. And these are some numbers that I think might be of interest to hotels. The average booking window was about 103 days, which, as Jeremiah mentioned earlier, just shows that international travelers plan their trips well in advance, and they make their reservations far out. So, which allows hotels to sell higher rates farther out, and then as you get closer in, hotels can yield manage their unsold rooms, through different channels. So being able to sell your higher rates farther out is definitely a plus or a benefit. Then the average stay of about 4 nights, this might vary depending on the destination, but international travelers have a tendency to stay longer. So the Chinese actually stay considerably longer, but they travel to different destinations. So if you can capture maybe even 2 or 3 nights for your property, that could be a significant boost in your revenue. And then the average rate for all the hotels that use our booking agent in Hawaii back in 2016 was $408.98. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to get this kind of rate, but what it does show is that Asians are not budget. They're not as price sensitive. They're looking for quality accommodations, and they're willing to pay the price to stay at nice hotels. So it just shows that there's an opportunity for virtually any type of hotel that if you're going after a high-end business, definitely Asians could be a good fit for your property.
And you said that you've seen a 30% uptick in reservation revenues year over year.
Yeah, we're actually on pace this year to process approximately 24 million. So we're looking at an increase from 16 million last year to about 24 million this year. So we're definitely seeing a growth in reservations, direct consumer reservations. Okay. And lastly, you might be wondering who Peckroom is and who do we work with? Well, these are just some examples of some of our clients. As I mentioned earlier, Starwood Hawaii, Prince Resorts Hawaii, Outrigger. We develop Japanese websites for all of their properties throughout Asia Pacific. We work with airlines, SeaWorld San Diego. We develop their Japanese website. Visit Anaheim, Santa Clara, a couple of destination examples that we work with. And then we also work with both branded and independent hotels, as well as retail. We've done work for Tiffany, Neiman Marcus. We handle the Japanese reservations for Ruth Chris Hawaii, which Jeremiah mentioned earlier that Japanese are willing to spend a lot of money on dining. And my wife actually handles the customer service for Ruth Chris Hawaii, the Japanese customer service, and their average check is probably in the $70 to $80 range per person. So it's a pretty significant part of their business. Then Alamana Center is a retail travel agent. So lastly, here's our contact information. So we thank you for listening to this, to joining us today, and hopefully we've provided some information that might be of use to you, might spur some ideas or help you to become creative in how you approach these markets. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Barry. Bringing that lived experience to how to attract Asian markets, I think is really, really valuable. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we have the calendar, which a couple of people have kind of raised their hands. I'll try to send that to everybody after we log off today. And we also have, Barry mentioned, the connections to receptive tour operators. Get in touch with Barry and he will give you ideas for how to approach these receptive tour operators, what kind of things in your area might be interesting for them to see. And we're always welcome to chat. So Thank you so much, Barry. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, if I can add one more thing. Last week was IPW. I had attended many IPWs. Granted, they were back in the 90s, but I've attended IPWs, so I understand the concept and the structure of IPW. And many of you have probably attended last week, and so you met with the buyers from international feeder markets, which may have included Asia. So these are areas that if you'd like to just chat about your particular situation and just want to explore some ideas, give me a call, let me know, and then I'll be happy to kind of share maybe some ideas. We can kind of take a look at your situation and see if there are things that we can do to help you.
Excellent. And does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask while we're here? We have a couple more minutes, then we're going to wrap up at the top of the hour. Well, as you were saying, Barry, it's a big conversation. It's nothing we're going to cover in an hour, but we saw the potential. We've seen what it can mean to our local areas. So I really appreciate you making yourself available for this.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for joining us. And hopefully you'll have some great experiences working with Asian markets and seeing some results from it.
Great. Everybody can download the slides, just that button on the right, or we'll get in touch with you soon. Hope you have a great day. Thank you so much, Barry.
Okay, well, thank you.
Much appreciated. Have a good day, everybody. Bye now.